Fine. Anyway, speaking of social media, thank you again for chiming in here on Facebook Live. We're going to begin with that serious story. Yep. And it has to do with the YouTube user turned YouTube headquarters shooter yesterday. This all happened around 12:45. So as this crew was leaving, we just started hearing words of breaking news. I saw the alert come up on my phone. Same. And sure enough, this woman, which we'll get to the reasons why that is surprising, but this woman, she was down in San Diego at her grandmother's house, and her siblings and her parents say she went missing. So they'd actually called police and say, oh, we have a missing person in our family. And then they tracked her vehicle and saw that it was near Mountain View, which is a community near where this all happened in San Bruno. So this is just outside of San Francisco, and we know that she turned the gun on herself, so she killed herself. 3 people are injured and they're recovering this morning. So that is the very latest. But again, this all comes down to her being not a YouTube employee, but a YouTube user. Supposedly, YouTube had slashed her ad revenue. So basically, she was losing money, and they had taken down some of her videos. She has millions of views, thousands and thousands of followers.
Wild.
Kind of, and I don't want to speculate and say it's odd, but in my opinion, as looking as someone who browses YouTube, interesting videos that she had posted, vegan lifestyle,
odd exercise videos, an interesting choice of clothing.
But people were following her, and that's the thing about YouTube these days. Weird things are online, and people are intrigued by them. So for whatever reason, she was losing money. This caused her to want to go onto the YouTube courtyard, correct, on campus, and shoot people. Ended up killing herself. And I heard one report saying, well, she wasn't very experienced because, well, what had happened to her was that she ended up killing herself and no one else died. A good thing for all of those survivors, but interesting, and they're not tying
She wasn't a good mass shooter.
That's literally
pretty much what it was.
People will say almost anything on social media, but 2 things that they're pointing out that I think really stand out. One is that her family really stepped up to the plate to help identify her very quickly. And that's something that we haven't seen in the past when it comes to mass shooters or really any sort of violent crime perpetrator. So that's number 1.
We do have sound if we want to hear the brother.
Yes, would love that.
Let's go ahead and roll that.
I googled the Mountain View. It was close to the YouTube headquarters. So, and she had a problem with YouTube. So we called that cop again and told him that there's a reason she went all the way from San Diego to that.
So there it was. So they had known she was upset with YouTube. All of a sudden she goes missing. They track her car and say, oh, it's near YouTube. So all of those signs, like to your point, they alerted police.
Exactly.
Well, there must have been something in the conversations between her and her family. Because it's one thing if someone's upset about something, but then they called the police saying, hey, you need to know that she's in the area. She's really upset about this, knowing that something violent might happen. There must be
capable of that kind of scenario. Because if my brother had complained about a company, then I see that he's near it, I wouldn't be like, oh, let me call the police because he could shoot up a place. I mean, he's not capable. Any human being's capable, but that's to me interesting that a sibling would go as far as calling police. You're right.
When I was looking up the comments for my hit this morning on Morning Blend, I noticed one of the viewers said that on her personal website, she made a ranting post about YouTube and their censorship and how she felt like she wasn't able to voice her opinion. So maybe her family saw that. Maybe that was their red flag in addition to these. Maybe it's just a very vigilant family. It's incredible that they stood up in this way.
And I think they learned one thing. One of the things that I saw immediately after the response was that the law enforcement had to use employee badges to go into the building, room to room and hallway to hallway, because there was so much security in the building. So that's a good thing. But obviously the lack of security or the hole in security was outside of the building.
No metal detectors.
That's how she was able to enter the campus and then ultimately shoot all those people.
We talked about the weapon that she used.
So she used pistols instead of what's normally used in a mass shooting, or lately what's normally used, which is an AR-15. I also had another viewer comment and say, thank goodness it was a pistol and not an AR-15, because she's less able to cause damage, only harming 3 people instead of 17 that were killed in Parkland.
So these were random people that
she didn't know them. Correct. They're saying so far they weren't targeted. Okay. She just randomly went in there, was so upset, and just started shooting people.
So people want to know more about her. And of course, we're going to keep our eyes on what's coming in through the news channels. But what is interesting to a lot of people is that this is a woman, and that mass shootings are not done by women typically. In fact, I have a bunch of stats for you guys. 10 to 13% of homicides committed in this country are done by women. Very small number. Women are less likely than anyone, their male counterparts being the only other people to do it, to commit an incident with a firearm. They're more likely to do poisoning, which is 40% of the time, or using fire, incendiary devices, and that's 20% of the time. But in general, women are just less prone to violent or showing their emotions in a violent way. And so it's very shocking to a lot of people that this person is a woman.
And there was that statistic that at the Alabama, was at the university, where the teacher shot her co-workers. This was back in 2010. And so that was the last time that a solo female mass shooter.
This is
was
Michelle's called this up. This apparently is the shooter who was protesting on a street corner. I'm assuming that's her, but that was what we were talking about earlier.
This was on her Facebook
What does
page.
it say? It's hard to read on
it's
the
her.
screen.
It's her Facebook page. I'll just hold on, DJ.
Her name is Nasim Aghdam.
Yeah, that's
YouTube, dictatorship,
Yeah.
hidden policy, promotes stupidity, discrimination, suppression of truth. Then she sends them to a website,
Her
and she
website.
says,
Her own
share
personal
if you
website,
hate
yeah.
discrimination.
So
So
this is
she felt like she was being discriminated against because of YouTube's policies.
They're pulling her videos and again slashing ad revenue.
Right.
Yeah.
So the adpocalypse for YouTube, a lot of people have sounded off about this because a lot of people make their living on YouTube. It is a profession.
Right.
It is a job for a lot of people, but it's an odd job because you're creating your own, what they call content, right? Your
Okay,
own material,
creators.
whether it's you want to make videos on how to cook, or it's vlogging, or exercise videos, or what have you. But ultimately, you're still under this umbrella. You're still working for YouTube, or at least under their rules, and they can change these rules whenever they want. And they got a lot of controversy about, they sell ads in bulk. And so some brands did not want their ads put next to quote-unquote controversial videos or anything that would put them in a bad light. So there's a lot more strict controls, and so they can't monitor all these videos, they can't monitor all these placements. So in general, what they're trying to move toward is a more family-friendly environment. Those are the big brands. Those are your Dove soaps and your Glade and all those kinds of things. And so they want a certain number of subscribers, and they want a certain number of views and a certain length, so that they know, and you're posting all the time. They want to sort of curate it so that they know that in general it's not these wild, crazy one-off videos that all of a sudden they go viral and they have a bunch of views, and then they turn to look at it and something, somebody harming themselves or something like that came out of nowhere. So they're trying to do what they can to sort of tailor it, and it affects a lot of people, not just her. But lots of people in the YouTube community were really upset about these changes because it ultimately, they lose money.
So a conversation that's coming up in our comments, two of them. One is, of course, gun control. That was going to come up. But the second one is about equality. And this discussion, where's the talk about equality now? We've been talking about it in terms of the Me Too movement. But he thinks it's
should advertisers have the authority to say?
Stefan. I don't know, advertising or what, but it brings up an interesting point about how women have been mentally primed to not commit as many violent crimes. And one thing that came up in the research is that men, over the course of history, have been rewarded for violent behavior. Going back to the hunter-gatherer days, when men had to, this is a long time ago, but they had to get the meat, bring it back to the house, but then thinking about superheroes, and how the reward for a superhero was winning the girl at the end of the day, and the accolades that come with being violently aggressive to people.
So now that we are seeing an increase in female behind the capes, if you will, or in front of the capes, so the question I have is, are we going to see more females then get more aggressive, like what men traditionally are? I don't know.
That's a conversation that's coming up, Walt Gray. I know you're looking at me a little crazy, but I swear.
I look at this like anything else. I think it's an isolated incident.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, women don't do this all the time. It's going to happen once in a while.
Right.
We could bring in someone who would describe for us why women are less apt to do things like this than men. But I think, men maybe just are a little bit more aggressive in their thinking, and machismo or something like that. I mean, I don't know. I'm not psychologist. I don't believe I am anyway. So, you know,
Someone thinks
Although
differently.
being married one and having many children too makes you a bit of a psychologist.
it does. It makes
You
me
must have
a
to
lot
learn how
of
to
things.
A lot
navigate
of things.
different
Makes me,
people.
makes me a lot of things which are not qualified for this discussion. But we're just, Michelle and I are just going through the entire website here. And,
Okay.
and
Her
just
website.
her entire website.
Interesting.
And there's photos of what happened in San Bruno yesterday. And it's unfortunate. But it could have been a whole
So were there
lot
red
worse.
flags?
I don't.
I would say no,
I don't
not
think
really.
so. Not
Maybe not
anything
through
that
the
we're seeing.
videos, but through the family.
Who
And
isn't? I mean, who isn't mad at a YouTube or an Amazon or something where your order got screwed up or you've lost some ad revenue? I'm just thinking, okay, what does YouTube do going forward?
Yes.
What is Google's offices doing today? Are they hiring a second guy at the desk? Or is YouTube installing a metal detector later this morning?
Right.
I mean, this is really where the story is. And
And how that digital platform is the real deal these days. I mean, we saw Zuckerberg this morning being called to testify because of all the data breaches that are happening. I mean, this is Zuckerberg.
Right.
This is someone who created the social media platform that is Facebook, and you had to have a college email in order to have one. And
yeah.
now he is facing this sort of controversy. And it's interesting to see these sort of times, right, where people are getting so mad that they're killing people over losing money on YouTube. I mean, okay, it could isolate it incident. This only happened this one time.
Yes, this is what happened. You're exactly right. However, for this lady, this was her whole life,
a
living
lot
at
of
her
people.
parents' house, and it just seems like this is what she did. And the YouTube, did what they did to her, which caused her to go over the edge. So you could say, we all could say, okay, she got her revenue slashed by 50%. What's the big? This looks like it was her whole life.
To her, it was her life.
This just boom, and
her
that if you're looking for motive, but to randomly go into YouTube and start shooting employees, I don't know.
So
There's a cultural thing. I mean, she's
a cult.
Persian, and Ariane mentioned off the top that she dressed interestingly or differently, and she seems to be a bit of an odd sort. But I think obviously I could just sum it up saying there's obviously cultural differences here in attire and thinking.
Yeah.
But I that's all I got on that.